The transport ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars, their massive hulls blocking out sections of the blue sky. Captain Marcus Chen watched from the bridge of the orbital defense station as the Kethmaran Empire's vessels landed in major cities across the globe. Each ship was the size of a city block, their dark metal surfaces gleaming with an otherworldly sheen that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Sir, they're not responding to any of our communications," reported Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez from her console. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface, sending signal after signal into the void. "Standard frequencies, emergency channels, even the old radio bands. Nothing." Marcus clenched his jaw. 3 months ago, humanity had received its first message from beyond the stars. The Kethmoran Galactic Empire had announced their arrival with a simple declaration transmitted to every device on Earth simultaneously. They claimed dominion over this sector of space and demanded immediate surrender. The message had been brief, cold, and absolute. Earth's united government had tried diplomacy. They had sent messages of welcome, offers of trade, cultural exchange proposals. Every attempt at peaceful contact had been met with silence. Now, watching the alien ships settle onto Earth's surface like parasites, Marcus understood that silence had been an answer in itself. "Admiral's on the line, sir," Rodriguez announced. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Admiral Catherine Wong's stern face. Behind her, Marcus could see the bustling command center of Earth's primary defense station. Officers moved with urgent purpose, their voices a low murmur of coordinated activity. "Marcus, what's your status?" Wong asked without preamble. 12 enemy vessels have landed in major population centers worldwide: Tokyo, New York, London, Moscow, Beijing, Mumbai, Cairo, Sydney, Sao Paulo, Lagos, Mexico City, and Berlin. Each ship has deployed approximately 1,000 troops. Wong's expression darkened. "Casualties?" "Unknown at this time. The ships landed in open areas, but they've established perimeters around government buildings and key infrastructure. No hostile action yet, but their intent seems clear." "Understood. We're mobilizing all available forces. I want you to maintain position and monitor their movements. Do not engage unless directly threatened." The communication ended, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the growing dread in his stomach. Through the viewport, he could see the curve of Earth below, now marked by the ominous presence of alien invaders. Hours passed in tense silence. Reports filtered in from around the globe as the Kethmaran forces established their presence. They were tall beings, nearly 8 feet in height, with pale gray skin and elongated limbs. Their faces were angular, almost insectoid, with large black eyes that reflected no emotion. They wore form-fitting armor that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, adapting to their movements. The first contact came in London. A delegation of Earth's finest diplomats approached the alien perimeter under a white flag. The Kethmarans allowed them to advance until they stood before what appeared to be the ship's commanding officer. The alien studied them with those unblinking black eyes for several long minutes before speaking in perfect English. "You will surrender unconditionally," the commander stated. Its voice was flat, mechanical, as if emotion was a foreign concept. "Your species will serve the Empire as laborers. Resistance will result in immediate execution." Ambassador Jennifer Harrison, a veteran diplomat who had negotiated peace in 3 separate conflicts, stepped forward. "We come in peace. Surely we can find common ground, some arrangement that benefits both our peoples." The Kethmoran commander tilted its head slightly, the only sign that it had even heard her words. "You misunderstand. This is not a negotiation. This is a declaration. You have 1 Earth day to formally surrender. If your governments do not comply, we will begin systematic elimination of your population centers." "And if we do surrender," Harrison pressed, her voice steady despite the terror that must have been coursing through her veins. Then only half your population will be eliminated. The remainder will serve. The words hit like a physical blow. Harrison staggered backward, her face pale with shock. The other diplomats exchanged horrified glances. This wasn't conquest in any traditional sense. This was genocide with a thin veneer of mercy. "You can't be serious," Dr. Robert Kim, the chief xenobiologist, managed to say. "We're a peaceful species. We've done nothing to harm you." The commander's black eyes fixed on him. "Peaceful species do not develop weapons capable of destroying planets. Your kind has progressed too far. You represent a potential threat to the Empire's stability. Therefore, you must be controlled or eliminated." "But we've never used such weapons aggressively," Harrison argued. "Our nuclear arsenal exists only for defense. The capacity for destruction is sufficient. Your surrender is required." The delegation was dismissed with a casual wave of the commander's elongated hand. As they retreated, Marcus watched the exchange through live feeds from news drones hovering at the perimeter. The aliens' casual dismissal of human life chilled him to the bone. Similar scenes played out across the globe. The message was consistent: surrender or face annihilation. There would be no negotiation, no compromise, no middle ground. Earth's leaders convened in emergency session. The debates raged for hours as politicians, military commanders, and scientists argued over humanity's response. Some advocated immediate surrender, believing that half of humanity surviving was better than total extinction. Others called for resistance, unwilling to bow to alien tyranny. The decision came when the Keth Morans grew impatient with humanity's deliberations. The first executions began in Moscow. The aliens had demanded that each city provide a demonstration of submission. When the Russian government refused to comply, the Keth Morans acted with brutal efficiency. They rounded up 100 women from the surrounding area, selected seemingly at random from the streets, offices, and homes. Marcus watched in horror as the live feeds showed the aliens constructing gallows in Red Square. The ancient cobblestones, which had witnessed centuries of Russian history, became the stage for humanity's darkest hour. The women were forced to stand in neat rows, their faces showing a mixture of terror, defiance, and confusion. "This is a demonstration of the Empire's authority," announced the Keth Moran commander through speakers that broadcast across the city. "Your government has failed to respond to our demands. These executions will continue hourly until compliance is achieved." The nooses were crude but effective. The aliens worked with mechanical precision, showing no emotion as they prepared for mass murder. Marcus found himself gripping the edge of his command console so tightly that his knuckles went white. "Sir, incoming transmission from Moscow Control," Rodriguez reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "Put it through." General Pavel Volkov's face appeared on screen, his typically stoic expression cracking with barely controlled rage. "Chen, are you seeing this?" "Yes, sir, we all are." "The Kremlin is in emergency session. They're about to announce surrender." Marcus felt something die inside his chest. "And the other capitals?" "Same story. Washington is in chaos. Beijing has already indicated they'll comply. London is holding out, but—" Volkov gestured toward something off-screen. "This is what resistance gets us." The execution began with sickening efficiency. The aliens pulled levers simultaneously, and 100 lives ended in an instant. The cameras captured every horrible detail as the bodies swayed in the afternoon breeze. Moscow fell silent, except for the sound of weeping from the crowds held back by alien guards. 1 hour, the commander announced. "The next demonstration will involve 200 subjects unless your government formally surrenders." The Russian president's surrender came 43 minutes later. But the Keth Morans weren't finished. Each major city received the same ultimatum: comply or watch innocent people die. The pattern was always the same: Women were selected for execution, always in increasing numbers if governments hesitated. Tokyo fell after 50 executions, New York after 75. London held out the longest, resulting in 300 deaths before Parliament finally voted to surrender. By the end of the week, every major government on Earth had formally capitulated to the Kethmoran Empire. The terms were as brutal as promised. Half of humanity would be eliminated to ensure compliance. The remainder would serve as laborers for the Empire's expansion into this sector of space. The selection process began immediately. The aliens divided humanity into categories based on age, physical condition, and useful skills. Children under 12 and adults over 60 were marked for elimination. So were the sick, the disabled, and anyone deemed genetically inferior by Kethmoran standards. Marcus watched it all unfold from his orbital station, feeling helpless as his species was catalogued like livestock. The defense stations had been ordered to stand down, their weapons powered off, their crews forbidden from interfering. But not everyone was ready to accept defeat. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been working in the Deep Space Monitoring Station on the far side of the moon when the invasion began. Her facility was too small and remote to warrant the aliens' attention, giving her a front-row seat to humanity's subjugation without being directly threatened. Elena was a brilliant physicist who had spent her career studying exotic matter and its potential applications. Her research into quantum entanglement and dimensional manipulation had been purely theoretical until now. But watching Earth's women die on alien gallows had transformed theory into desperate necessity. She began reaching out to similar researchers around the solar system, scientists on Mars colonies, asteroid mining operations, and outer planet research stations. People who had been overlooked in the aliens' initial assessment of human capabilities. "They think they know us," Elena transmitted to her growing network of researchers. "They think we're just another primitive species to be conquered and enslaved, but they made a mistake. They underestimated human ingenuity and our capacity for righteous anger." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Physicists, engineers, biologists, and computer specialists from across the solar system joined her cause. They began sharing research, pooling resources, and developing plans that the Kethmorans never could have anticipated. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, the executions continued. The aliens carried out their promise with mechanical precision, eliminating exactly half of humanity's population over the course of 3 months. They showed no preference for any particular group beyond their initial criteria. Race, nationality, religion, none of it mattered to the Kethmorans. They killed with the same emotionless efficiency they had demonstrated from the beginning. The survivors were organized into labor camps and put to work constructing massive facilities for the Empire's use. Spaceports, manufacturing plants, and resource extraction operations sprouted across Earth's surface like a technological cancer. But beneath the surface, something else was growing. Marcus had been transferred to Earth's surface after his orbital station was decommissioned. He found himself assigned to a labor camp in what had once been Nevada, forced to work alongside thousands of other former military personnel in building a Kethmoran mining operation. The work was backbreaking and the conditions harsh, but Marcus noticed something the aliens didn't. Their guards were overconfident, their security systems designed for a compliant population. They had never dealt with a species that could be both submissive and calculating at the same time. Small acts of sabotage began occurring throughout the camps. Equipment would mysteriously malfunction, supply shipments would go missing. Computer systems would develop unexplained glitches. Nothing dramatic enough to warrant mass retaliation, but enough to slowly degrade the efficiency of Kethmoran operations. More importantly, information was being passed between camps. A hidden network of communication had emerged, using everything from hand signals to hidden messages in routine work reports. Former military officers, intelligence operatives, and resistance fighters began organizing in secret. The message that reached Marcus on a cold December morning changed everything. It came through the network as a simple series of numbers that meant nothing to casual observation. But Marcus had been trained to recognize coded communications, and this one made his heart race. Elena and her team had achieved a breakthrough. They had found a way to strike back. The plan was audacious beyond belief. Using their research into exotic matter and dimensional manipulation, Elena's team had developed weapons that could bypass Kethmaran defenses entirely. More importantly, they had discovered a fundamental weakness in alien technology. The Kethmarans relied heavily on quantum communication networks to coordinate their vast empire. These networks were supposedly unbreachable, protected by encryption that would take conventional computers millions of years to crack. But Elena had found a way to turn the aliens' own technology against them. By introducing quantum viruses into their communication systems, humanity could not only disrupt their coordination, but actually gain access to their entire military network. The implications were staggering. Marcus felt hope returning for the first time in months. Around him, other prisoners continued their daily routines, unaware that their salvation was being planned by brilliant minds hidden in the darkness of space. The Kethmarans had made a crucial error in their assessment of humanity. They had mistaken submission for acceptance. They had confused obedience with defeat. Most importantly, they had failed to understand that humans were most dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. The war was about to begin, and this time, humanity would fight on their own terms. 6 months had passed since the Kethmoran Empire claimed Earth, and the aliens had settled into their routine of brutal efficiency. They processed human labor with the same mechanical precision they had shown during the executions, treating the survivors like sophisticated machinery that required only basic maintenance to function. Dr. Elena Vasquez floated in the zero gravity of her hidden laboratory, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed calculations beyond anything humanity had attempted before. Around her, the cramped confines of the modified asteroid facility hummed with activity as her team of 37 researchers worked around the clock on what they had dubbed Project Liberation. "Elena, I'm reading quantum fluctuations in the test chamber," called out Dr. James Park from across the lab. The young physicist had been studying exotic matter interactions when the invasion began. Now his theoretical research was being transformed into humanity's most dangerous weapons. Elena pushed off from her workstation and glided toward the sealed chamber where their latest experiment was taking place. Through the reinforced window, she could see a small sample of Kethmaran technology floating in perfect suspension, surrounded by monitoring equipment that recorded its every molecular vibration. "Show me the readings," she said, settling beside James at his console. The data streaming across the screen was remarkable. The quantum virus they had developed was successfully infiltrating the alien device's communication protocols, creating backdoors into systems that the Kethmarans believed were impenetrable. More importantly, the virus was learning, adapting, and spreading through the device's network connections. "It's working better than we hoped," James whispered, his voice filled with awe and terror at what they had created. "The virus isn't just breaking their encryption. It's rewriting their base code, turning their own security systems against them." Elena nodded grimly. "How long before we can deploy it on a larger scale?" "Give me another week to test the propagation rates." "But Elena—" James paused, his expression troubled. "Once we release this, there's no going back. The Kethmarans will know we have capabilities they never suspected." "Good," Elena replied, her voice hard as steel. "Let them know. Let them fear." Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, the resistance network had grown far beyond what the Kethmaran overseers could have imagined. Marcus Chen had become a key coordinator for operations in the former United States, using his military experience to organize cells of fighters who operated under the aliens' notice. The labor camp in Nevada had become a hub of covert activity. During the day, humans worked on the mining operation with apparent compliance, their movements monitored by Kethmoran guards who stood like gray statues at regular intervals. But at night, when the aliens retreated to their climate-controlled quarters, the real work began. In hidden chambers carved from the camp's foundation, former soldiers, engineers, and scientists worked on weapons and communication equipment built from salvaged materials. The aliens' arrogance had led them to underestimate human ingenuity. They saw only primitive beings good for manual labor, missing the fact that those same beings could turn mining equipment into weapons and industrial components into sophisticated technology. The Shanghai cell just confirmed successful sabotage of the manufacturing facility, reported Maria Santos, a former intelligence officer who now served as Marcus's communications specialist. She spoke in hushed tones while monitoring the alien guards through a network of hidden cameras. They managed to introduce flawed components into the Kethmoran supply chain without detection. Marcus studied the coded reports flowing in from resistance cells around the globe. Each successful operation was small, barely noticeable individually, but together they represented something the aliens had never encountered, a conquered species that refused to stay conquered. "What about the European network?" he asked. "Growing stronger every day. The London cell has made contact with survivors in the rural areas. Apparently there are entire communities the Kethmorans missed during their initial sweep. They're organizing raids on alien supply convoys." The Resistance had learned to exploit the Kethmorans' greatest weakness, their inability to understand human psychology. The aliens expected immediate, total compliance from conquered species. They had no framework for dealing with a population that appeared submissive while secretly planning rebellion. 3,000 miles away in what had once been the Swiss Alps, Dr. Sarah Chen worked in another hidden laboratory. Unlike Elena's asteroid facility, this one was buried deep beneath a mountain, its entrance disguised as a collapsed mining tunnel. Sarah was Elena's sister, though they hadn't seen each other in over a year. Both had inherited their parents' brilliant minds and their grandfather's stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Sarah's specialty was biotechnology, and her research had taken a different but equally dangerous direction. While Elena worked to turn alien technology against them, Sarah was developing biological weapons specifically designed to target Kethmoran physiology. "The latest batch is ready for testing," announced Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a former military researcher who had escaped the Tokyo purges by being in Geneva when the invasion began. She held up a small vial containing what appeared to be ordinary water. Sarah took the vial carefully, aware that its innocent appearance concealed months of painstaking genetic engineering. The liquid contained modified microorganisms that would be harmless to human biology but lethal to the Kethmoran's unique cellular structure. "Deployment method?" Sarah asked. "We've successfully incorporated it into their food processing systems. The organisms can survive in their nutrient solutions for weeks before activation. Once released, the infection spreads through their respiratory systems within hours." Sarah nodded, though a part of her recoiled at the thought of biological warfare. But the images of Earth's women hanging in public squares had hardened her heart against mercy. The Kethmorans had shown no compassion for humanity. They would receive none in return. "Begin production for wide-scale deployment," she ordered. "Coordinate with the resistance cells to infiltrate their major facilities." As winter turned to spring, the aliens began noticing problems with their operations. Equipment failures were becoming more frequent. Supply shipments were arriving incomplete or contaminated. Computer systems were experiencing unexplained glitches that their technicians couldn't trace or repair. Commander Zekthos, the Kethmoran leader who had overseen the initial invasion, stood in his command center reviewing reports from across the occupied planet. His tall, angular form cast an ominous shadow as he studied the data displays that showed declining efficiency in every sector of the occupation. "These humans are more troublesome than anticipated," he said to his chief subordinate, Sub-Commander Velthara. His voice carried the same flat, emotionless tone that all Keth-Morans used, but there was an undertone of concern that would have been imperceptible to human ears. "Perhaps we should accelerate the elimination schedule," Velthara suggested. "Remove another 20% of the population to ensure compliance." Zekthos considered this option. The Empire's standard procedure for dealing with resistant populations was simple: increase casualties until rebellion became impossible. But something about these humans gave him pause. "No," he decided. "These incidents appear random, uncoordinated, likely the result of inferior human manufacturing and incompetence rather than organized resistance. Continue monitoring but maintain current protocols." It was a crucial mistake. The Keth-Morans' inability to conceive of subtle rebellion blinded them to the growing threat beneath their notice. They were accustomed to dealing with species that either surrendered completely or fought openly. Humanity's capacity for hidden warfare was beyond their experience. By summer, Elena's quantum virus was ready for deployment. The final version was elegant in its lethality, designed to spread through the aliens' communication networks like a digital plague. Once introduced to any Keth-Moran system, it would propagate automatically, rewriting core protocols and creating backdoors that would give humanity access to their entire military network. The deployment required coordination with resistance cells across the planet. Elena's team had developed a method for transmitting the virus through modified communication equipment that could interface with alien systems without being detected. But the transmission had to be simultaneous from multiple points to ensure the virus spread faster than the Keth-Morans could respond. Marcus received the final deployment codes through the resistance network on a hot July morning. The message was simple. At exactly midnight, Greenwich Mean Time, every resistance cell with access to Keth-Moran systems would upload Elena's virus simultaneously. "This is it," Marcus told his team of infiltrators as they prepared for their mission. "Once we do this, there's no hiding anymore. They'll know we've been planning this all along." The team consisted of 5 former military specialists who had spent months learning to mimic Keth-Moran technology signatures. They would infiltrate the aliens' main communication hub in the Nevada facility and plant the virus directly into the primary network node. As night fell across the camp, the team moved with practiced stealth through corridors they had memorized during months of preparation. The Keth-Moran guards followed predictable patrol patterns, their movements as mechanical as everything else about their species. They never varied their routes or timing, a consistency that made them vulnerable to human unpredictability. The communication hub was protected by sophisticated alien security systems, but the Resistance had learned to exploit the gap between Keth-Moran technology and human creativity. While the aliens built perfect defenses against known threats, they couldn't anticipate solutions that fell outside their logical parameters. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Marcus's former communications officer, worked quickly to interface her modified equipment with the alien systems. Her fingers moved across jury-rigged controls that combined human electronics with salvaged Keth-Moran components, creating a hybrid technology that neither species could have developed alone. "Establishing connection," she whispered through the team's hidden communication network. "Initiating upload sequence." Across the globe, similar teams were performing identical operations. In London, resistance fighters uploaded the virus through a compromised manufacturing facility. In Tokyo, survivors hiding in the ruins transmitted their payload through an abandoned monitoring station. In São Paulo, former Brazilian special forces used a captured alien transport to access the orbital communication network. At exactly midnight Greenwich time, 37 simultaneous uploads flooded the Keth-Moran military network with Elena's quantum virus. The digital plague spread through their systems with terrifying efficiency, jumping from node to node faster than their automated defenses could respond. Within minutes, the virus had infiltrated every major Kethmaran facility on Earth. Within hours, it had propagated to their orbital platforms and nearby ship formations. By dawn, the infection had reached the outer edges of their local network, giving humanity access to military communications across the entire solar system. The first sign of success came when Marcus's team detected Kethmoran emergency protocols activating throughout the Nevada facility. Alien personnel moved with uncharacteristic urgency as their systems began reporting massive security breaches across all networks. "We're in," Rodriguez reported, her voice tight with excitement and fear. "I'm seeing their command structures, deployment schedules, even communications with their home fleet." What they discovered was both terrifying and encouraging. Terrifying because it revealed the true scope of the Kethmaran Empire, a vast interstellar civilization that had conquered hundreds of worlds. Encouraging because it showed that their forces in the Sol system were just a small expeditionary fleet, cut off from reinforcements by the distances involved in interstellar travel. More importantly, the virus was giving humanity access to the aliens' most sensitive military data. Weapon specifications, shield frequencies, tactical doctrines, everything the Resistance needed to plan a real counterattack was now available through the compromised network. But the greatest discovery came when Elena's team accessed the aliens' historical records. The Kethmaran Empire had a long history of conquest, but they had never encountered a species quite like humanity. Other civilizations had either surrendered immediately or fought with conventional military tactics. None had ever developed the combination of technological innovation and guerrilla warfare that characterized human resistance. "They're confused," Elena reported to the Resistance leadership through their newly established quantum communication network. "Their tactical computers can't develop effective countermeasures because they don't understand our approach to warfare." The aliens' greatest strength, their logical, systematic approach to conquest, had become a weakness when faced with human unpredictability. They couldn't adapt to an enemy that refused to follow established patterns of behavior. As summer progressed, the Resistance began using their newfound access to Kethmaran systems to coordinate more ambitious operations. Convoys were ambushed at precisely the right moments. Facilities were sabotaged just as critical equipment arrived. Guard schedules were disrupted through false orders transmitted through compromised communication channels. The aliens began to realize they were facing something unprecedented. Commander Zekthos called an emergency meeting of his senior staff as reports of coordinated attacks reached his headquarters. "These incidents are not random," he announced to his assembled officers. "The humans have developed capabilities we did not anticipate. They have somehow gained access to our secure communications." The revelation sent ripples of shock through the Kethmaran command structure. In their thousands of years of conquest, no primitive species had ever successfully infiltrated their military networks. The implications were disturbing on a level that challenged their fundamental understanding of inferior civilizations. "Recommendations?" Zekthos demanded. "Complete network shutdown and rebuild," suggested Sub-Commander Velthera. "Eliminate all compromised systems and restore from secure backups." "Time required?" "Minimum 6 months for full restoration. During that period, we will be operating with severely limited coordination capabilities." Zekthos considered the options before him. A network shutdown would eliminate humanity's access to their systems, but it would also leave his forces vulnerable and uncoordinated for an extended period. In that time, the human resistance could escalate their activities significantly. "Denied," he decided. "Initiate enhanced security protocols and begin tracing the intrusion sources. I want the leaders of this resistance identified and eliminated." It was another mistake that would prove costly. Rather than cutting their losses and rebuilding their compromised systems, The Kethmarans chose to fight a digital war against opponents who had home field advantage in the realm of creative technology. Elena smiled grimly as she monitored the aliens' enhanced security attempts from her asteroid laboratory. They were trying to fight her quantum virus with conventional cybersecurity methods, like using armor to stop a nuclear explosion. The virus was operating on principles of quantum mechanics that their traditional defenses couldn't address. "They're making it worse," James observed, watching as the Kethmoran countermeasures inadvertently created new vulnerabilities for the virus to exploit. "Every security patch they install gives us more access points." The stage was set for the final phase of humanity's rebellion. The Resistance now had access to alien military systems, weapons data, and tactical information. Sarah's biological weapons were ready for deployment. Most importantly, the Kethmarans had lost the psychological advantage that had made their conquest possible. Humanity was no longer a conquered species awaiting execution. They had become something far more dangerous, a clever, determined enemy with nothing left to lose and every reason to fight back. The attack began at dawn on the anniversary of the first executions. As the sun rose over the ruins of Moscow's Red Square, where the gallows still stood as grim monuments to Kethmaran cruelty, humanity struck back with a coordinated assault that the aliens never saw coming. Marcus Chen stood in the hidden command center beneath the Nevada mining facility, watching as displays showed resistance operations launching simultaneously across the globe. His team had spent months preparing for this moment, transforming from defeated survivors into the architects of an alien empire's destruction. "All cells report ready status," announced Maria Santos from her communication station. Around them, dozens of former military personnel worked at consoles built from salvaged alien technology and human ingenuity. "Biological weapons are in position. Network infiltration is complete. Strike teams are standing by." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of humanity's hopes resting on his shoulders. Through the quantum virus, they had learned that the Kethmaran expedition fleet was expecting a supply convoy from their home territory in 6 months. If humanity couldn't eliminate the alien presence before those reinforcements arrived, Earth would face a far more devastating occupation. "Initiate Phase 1, Marcus ordered. Across the planet, Dr. Sarah Chen's biological weapons began their silent work. The modified microorganisms introduced into Kethmaran food and water supplies over the past month activated simultaneously as resistance members triggered their release mechanisms. The aliens had never developed immunity to Earth-based pathogens, and Sarah's engineered plague was specifically designed to exploit their unique biology. In the Tokyo occupation zone, Kethmoran guards began collapsing at their posts as the biological agent attacked their respiratory systems. Their gray skin took on a sickly green tint as their bodies struggled against an infection they had no defense against. Within hours, half of the alien garrison was either dead or dying. Similar scenes played out in major cities around the world. The Kethmarans' sterile, controlled environment had made them vulnerable to biological warfare in a way they had never anticipated. Their medical technology, advanced as it was, couldn't quickly adapt to combat an organism specifically engineered to target their cellular structure. But the biological attack was only the beginning. As the aliens' command structure reeled from the sudden plague striking their forces, Elena's quantum virus began the second phase of its programming. All across the globe, Kethmaran weapons systems turned on their operators as the virus seized control of their targeting computers. In the London occupation zone, alien defensive platforms that had protected their installations for months suddenly swiveled to target Kethmaran positions. The aliens' own energy weapons carved through their facilities with devastating efficiency, guided by human intelligence transmitted through their compromised networks. Commander Zekthos staggered as his command center shook under bombardment from his own defensive systems. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red illumination as his surviving officers scrambled to regain control of their rebellious technology. "Report!" he demanded, his voice strained with an emotion his species rarely acknowledged: fear. "All primary systems are compromised," Sub-Commander Velthara announced, her usually steady voice cracking with panic. "The humans have somehow gained complete control of our network. Our weapons are firing on our own positions. Our biological defenses have been bypassed. Casualties are at 70% and rising." Zekthos felt something that no Kethmaran commander had experienced in over 1,000 years of conquest: the possibility of defeat. These humans had done more than resist. They had turned the Empire's own technology into a weapon of revenge. "Emergency Protocol Omega," he ordered. "Activate planetary sterilization systems." If the Kethmarans could not control Earth, they would ensure that humanity could never threaten the Empire again. The sterilization protocol would eliminate all life on the planet's surface, denying the humans their victory even at the cost of the expedition's primary objectives. But Elena had anticipated this desperate measure. Her virus had been designed not just to infiltrate alien systems, but to learn their deepest protocols and turn them against their creators. As Zekthos activated the sterilization sequence, the virus intercepted the command and redirected it toward the aliens' own positions. The energy beam that would have scoured Earth clean instead focused on every Kethmaran installation simultaneously. Orbital platforms, ground facilities, and even their hidden bunkers were targeted by their own ultimate weapon. The irony was lost on the aliens as they faced annihilation by their own hand. On the surface, human resistance fighters emerged from their hiding places to witness the destruction of their oppressors. Marcus led his team out of the underground complex as alien facilities across the Nevada desert erupted in columns of superheated plasma. The mining operation that had consumed human lives for months was reduced to molten slag in minutes. "Phase 3 is go," Marcus transmitted to resistance cells worldwide. "All teams begin final assault on surviving positions." The third phase of humanity's counterattack was the most personal. While the virus and biological weapons had crippled the alien forces, human fighters moved to eliminate the survivors with weapons forged from alien technology and fueled by months of suppressed rage. In New York, former police officers and military veterans stormed the alien administrative center with weapons reverse-engineered from captured Kethmoran equipment. The aliens, weakened by biological warfare and cut off from their support systems, fell before the human assault like paper before flame. In Beijing, resistance fighters led by former Chinese special forces executed precision strikes against alien leadership positions. Their knowledge of the city's geography, combined with intelligence gathered through the compromised network, allowed them to eliminate key targets while avoiding the aliens' remaining defenses. But it was in Moscow, at the site of the first executions, that humanity's vengeance reached its peak. Dr. Sarah Chen had personally traveled there to oversee the final assault on the alien command structure. As she stood in Red Square, surrounded by the gallows that had claimed so many innocent lives, she felt the full weight of what her species had endured. The surviving Kethmaran forces had barricaded themselves in the Kremlin, turning the ancient fortress into their final stronghold. But their position was hopeless. The virus had given humanity control of their defensive systems. The biological weapons had decimated their numbers, and Russian resistance fighters knew every secret passage in the historic complex. Sarah led the assault personally, carrying a modified alien weapon that fired concentrated bursts of the same energy that had powered their execution machines. The irony was intentional. She wanted the aliens to die by their own technology, just as they had killed humanity's daughters. The battle was brief but decisive. The remaining Kethmorans fought with the mechanical efficiency their species was known for, but they were outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting an enemy that understood their technology better than they did. Within hours, the last alien resistance in Moscow was eliminated. Commander Zekthos survived until the end, trapped in a bunker beneath the Kremlin with a handful of his officers. When Sarah finally confronted him, he showed the same emotionless demeanor that had characterized his species throughout the occupation. "You have achieved a temporary victory," he stated flatly. "The Empire will send additional forces. Your world will burn." Sarah studied his angular features, seeing no hint of regret or recognition of his crimes. "No," she replied. "Your Empire will learn that some species bite back." She activated the weapon, and Zekthos dissolved into constituent atoms, ended by technology his own people had created. The last Kethmoran commander on Earth died as his victims had, efficiently and without ceremony. Similar scenes played out across the globe as humanity's systematic revenge eliminated every alien presence on the planet. The Resistance had learned from their oppressors' methods, showing the same ruthless efficiency that the Kethmorans had displayed during their conquest. Within 72 hours of the attack's beginning, Earth was free. But Elena knew that freedom was only the first step. The quantum virus had given her access to the aliens' complete military database, including information about the Kethmoran Empire's structure and capabilities. Humanity now faced a choice that would define their future as a species. "We could hide," Elena told the assembled resistance leaders during their first post-liberation meeting. The gathering took place in the ruins of the United Nations building, its chamber scarred by alien weapons but still standing. "We could destroy all traces of our technological advancement and hope the Empire writes us off as a failed expedition." Murmurs of consideration rippled through the assembly, but Marcus shook his head. "They'll be back eventually. Maybe not for decades, maybe not for centuries, but they'll return. And when they do, we'll be defenseless again. Alternatively," Elena continued, "we could use what we've learned to take the fight to them." The proposal was audacious beyond imagination. Humanity had barely survived contact with a small Kethmoran expedition. The idea of challenging their entire empire seemed like madness. But as Elena outlined what the virus had revealed about alien technology and tactics, a different picture emerged. The Kethmoran Empire was vast but inflexible. Their logical, systematic approach to conquest had served them well against conventional opponents, but it had proved vulnerable to human unpredictability. More importantly, their communication networks were standardized across their entire civilization, making them susceptible to the same quantum virus that had crippled their Earth expedition. "We can do to their entire empire what we did to their forces here," Elena explained. "The virus can propagate across their interstellar networks, giving us access to every major installation, every fleet, every command center." Dr. Sarah Chen stood to address the assembly. "They showed us no mercy. They executed our mothers, sisters, daughters for the crime of existing. If we have the capability to strike back, we owe it to every woman who died in their gallows to use it." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Humanity had been pushed to the brink of extinction and had fought their way back through intelligence, determination, and righteous fury. They would not cower in fear of their former oppressors. The decision was unanimous. Earth would go to war with the Kethmoran Empire. Over the following months, humanity transformed from a conquered species into something their former oppressors had never encountered: a technological predator specifically adapted to hunt them. Elena's team expanded the quantum virus into a fleet of digital weapons designed to spread across interstellar distances. Sarah's biological research produced targeted plagues that could eliminate Kethmoran populations while leaving other species unharmed. Most importantly, human engineers reverse-engineered alien technology to create weapons and ships that combined the best of both civilizations. Where Kethmoran technology emphasized efficiency and logic, Human modifications added unpredictability and creative adaptation. The resulting hybrid systems were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Marcus found himself appointed as humanity's first admiral of interstellar forces, commanding a fleet of ships built in hidden shipyards established in the asteroid belt. Each vessel was crewed by survivors of the occupation, men and women who had lost family to alien brutality and were eager to return the favor. The first human strike against a Kethmoran world came 18 months after Earth's liberation. The target was a minor outpost in a nearby star system, chosen specifically because it served as a communication relay for the Empire's local network. When humanity's fleet emerged from hyperspace, the quantum virus preceded them, turning the world's defenses against its own population. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Kethmoran garrison was dead, their facilities destroyed, and their communication networks compromised across 3 star systems. Human forces had suffered no casualties. More importantly, the virus had used the relay station to propagate deeper into the Empire's network, reaching worlds that had never heard of humanity. Across dozens of star systems, Kethmoran facilities began experiencing the same systematic failures that had preceded Earth's liberation. The Empire's response was swift but predictable. They dispatched a major fleet to investigate the disruption, following standard protocols that had served them well for millennia. But those protocols had never accounted for an enemy that could predict their moves by reading their own communications. The Kethmoran fleet walked into an ambush that had been planned using their own tactical databases. Human ships, invisible to alien sensors due to technology stolen from their own stealth systems, emerged from hiding to unleash weapons designed specifically to exploit weaknesses in Kethmoran shields and armor. The engagement was a massacre. Humanity had learned from the aliens' own playbook, turning their systematic efficiency against them. Where the Empire expected honorable combat between fleet formations, they found their own weapons targeting their own ships, guided by computers that no longer obeyed Kethmoran commands. Admiral Marcus Chen watched from the bridge of humanity's flagship as alien vessels died in the cold vacuum of space. Each explosion represented payback for the women who had died in Earth's public squares, for the families torn apart during the occupation, for the children who would never be born because their mothers had been selected for execution. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Proceed to the next target." The war that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Humanity didn't conquer worlds in the traditional sense. Instead, they turned the Empire's own infrastructure into a weapon of extinction. The quantum virus spread from world to world, carrying death to every Kethmoran population center while leaving other species unharmed. Within 5 years, the mighty Kethmoran Empire, a civilization that had dominated the galaxy for millennia, collapsed completely. Their worlds fell silent, their fleets destroyed by their own weapons, their population eliminated by plagues designed specifically to target their biology. Other alien civilizations watched in awe and terror as humanity accomplished what they had thought impossible: the total destruction of their former oppressors. But rather than establishing their own empire of conquest, humans did something unexpected. They offered alliance and protection to species that had suffered under Kethmoran rule, sharing the technology that had made their victory possible. Elena Vasquez, now Director of Interstellar Relations, addressed the newly formed Galactic Council from the same chamber where the Kethmorans had once demanded humanity's surrender. "We didn't fight for conquest," she explained to representatives of dozens of species. "We fought for survival, for justice, for the memory of those who died needlessly. Now that the threat is eliminated, we offer our hand in friendship to all who seek peaceful coexistence." The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson about humanity. They were a species capable of both incredible mercy and terrible vengeance. Those who approached them in peace found generous allies willing to share knowledge and protection. Those who threatened them discovered why the mighty Kethmoran Empire had vanished from the stars. Earth became the center of a new galactic civilization built on cooperation rather than conquest. The memorial in Moscow's Red Square was expanded to honor not just humanity's fallen, but all victims of Kethmoran oppression across the galaxy. The gallows remained as a reminder of what happened when civilizations mistook mercy for weakness. Humanity had proven that even the mightiest empire could fall when it faced opponents who refused to surrender their dignity, their ingenuity, or their determination to protect their own. The galaxy would remember this lesson for millennia to come, and the name human would be spoken with equal parts admiration and caution by species across the stars. The war was over. Humanity had won not just their freedom, but their place among the stars as guardians against tyranny. And in the cold depths of space, where the Kethmoran Empire once ruled supreme, only silence remained to mark the passing of those who had underestimated the species from a small blue world called Earth.